Cheers, guys. Epix911, welcome to the Elitist Geek VR news for August 15th. And as usual, for an action-packed Monday, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. The first little bit has to do, it's a follow-up on the Bethesda and id Software piece dealing with Fallout 4 and DoomVR. The concept of them working together isn't as logical as you would think it is. There's a lot of companies, the one that I currently work at, where we are owned by a Japanese conglomerate who owns literally dozens and dozens of other companies, most of which never really talk to each other. And having worked for Electronic Arts at a time when they owned Firaxis, Origin Systems, Bullfrog, the atmosphere was much the same. There was precious little interaction at the dev level with those companies. So it's nice to see when it does happen, because it does seem like a logical thing, right? You help each other out, but you got to remember, a lot of them are still independent business entities. They're still autonomous unto themselves. They still have to perform for the parent company. And that's where you get a lot of that kind of shutting yourself off to the rest of the company. But, working together has advantages that can benefit both. So either way, it's nice to see them do it. This is a follow-up to that in terms of Pete Hines. He's the marketing guru for Bethesda, and he specifically spoke in the article, it's an Upload VR article, about Fallout4VR, and to put to rest any fears, because I gotta admit it was one of mine, that Fallout4VR is going to be some crippled, watered down version of Fallout 4. And he specifically mentions in the interview that no, it contains the same VAT system, same combat system, same inventory system. It's essentially the same functionality-wise. Throw in the fact that, hey, this is really you in-game, right? When you call up your Pip-Boy, you really have to raise your arm to do it. And that got me excited to read, because it's a game that I love. I love Bethesda. I've said that before. Can't wait to try that. Nice to have confirmation, because I got to think that's a fear that a lot of us had, that it was in some way going to be watered down. But he also made a point of saying, look, you can trek across this world. It's going to be just as huge, but no real word on the locomotion system. And that's something we talk about a lot on this channel, different methods of locomotion. It'll be interesting to see which angle they go, especially if you consider that Doom has already stated that they're doing that kind of that burst speed run, right? That feeling where time slows down, you kind of get seconds of bullet time and then speed up, right? So it'll be neat to see where Fallout 4 goes. There were a couple of kind of eye-rolling things in the article. The first one, not so much eye-rolling as just, well, let's talk about it. So in there, the author said that, look, if you left DoomVR as is and you tried to adapt to the current game, it's way too fast and it's going to make sensitive people hurl. And I gotta admit, small part of me, for just a split second, said, who cares? Selfish part of me, right? Not that I don't care, guys. I totally get it. It sucks to be you guys and have the nausea. There's things I deal with. I get migraine headaches. They're genetic every couple of months, and they suck. The only thing that helps is darkness. No medication, no diet change, just darkness and time, right? So I get it. There's things that you can control. It just would literally, to me, it would suck. Because the way it seems is the more fluid and visceral the experience, the more sick it's going to make you. And I kind of want that visceral and fluidity. So anyways, it sucks, but let's move on. The other kind of eye-rolling part of that interview was the statement that the author made saying, based on what you're telling us, Pete, this looks like a really good fit for the PlayStation 4. And I agree with one of the comments in the comment section that essentially said, are you kidding me? 4-year-old hardware, dated graphic card. It still remains to be seen how much we're going to be able to pull off with old PS4 versus new PS4. And remember, we haven't heard anything definitively. We know new PS4 is coming. We know PlayStation VR is coming. But what we don't know is how the experience is going to differ from PlayStation 4 to new PlayStation 4. So the jury's still out on that one. Hopefully, obviously, as this thing gets closer to launch, more is going to be made public, and we as consumers are going to be able to make educated decisions, right? Do we upgrade? Do we stay pat? Right? So hopefully, as we get closer. The other big news piece today was Minecraft officially launching the Windows version of Minecraft for the Oculus Rift. Now, this has had a bit of a ripple effect, and part of that ripple effect is they asked the Minecraft people to basically take down their demo. Now, the cool part is that they let them put it up in the first place, right? And basically let them have it available right up until launch. And the mod creators themselves have basically stated publicly in this article, in fact, that, look, they were getting a little burnt out from the work anyways. And, you know, with this release on the Rift and with ViveCraft still being a thing, it made sense for them to pull the plug at this point. So I had actually only tried the Minecraft, hadn't tried Minecraft, but I really liked the way they made the game work with the Vive controllers, personally, right? I think I heard from a couple of you that didn't like it, some of you that also agreed that you liked it, but I thought it was very intuitive, made a lot of sense, right? And going to the Oculus Rift now with a gamepad is going to feel like a step back, right? Because remember, they're not getting Oculus Touch support, Rift users, until later this year for that game. So for me, it's not so bad, but I can understand people who have a Vive kind of being a little pissed because, you know, you're having to, if you were playing Minecraft, you're now going to have to switch, whatever, you know, and others, hey, it's the fact that it's a Rift exclusive for now. So jury remains out. ViveCraft has a lot of additions to it. It's had a lot of enhancements that the dev studio would have a pretty challenging time bringing it up to that kind of functionality anyways. So maybe this is for the best. If they can let, you know, Vives live on through ViveCraft and they become the, you know, Rift gamepad, eventually Oculus Touch solution, and it works out for the best for everyone around. So I already have it. So because I qualify in having the Windows version of Minecraft already, I'm definitely going to try it. And I'm really curious to see how it's going to differ, right, on the gamepad. I imagine it's going to feel not quite as immersive, but hey, I could be wrong. We'll find out, right? We will find out fairly shortly. I'll probably give it a try tonight. And there's other versions as well. We've had the Gear VR version, of course, right? So there are other incarnations, not just the Oculus Rift or even ViveCraft. The next article, this is something we've talked about where I've basically said, look, when it comes to gaming, sometimes I want to sit on my arse and I just want to play, right? Sit on the couch, veg up, throw one of these in my hand, and just get on with the business of gaming, right? Without having to exert myself, without having to do any of that stuff. And then the exceptions to that, I said, were, look, there are times where maybe I do want to do a cardio style game or a game where it calls for more physical activity because I'm actually in the mood for that, right? And that there would be exceptions, specifically games that cater to exercise or workouts or being physical. Well, one of those exceptions was basically launched today, and the game is called Racket NX. There's a pretty cool Road to VR article on it, and they've got about a 30-second hype video there, which you can check out, which is kind of cool. It's a lady putting on her HTC Vive and basically smashing the ever-living crap out of her virtual little arena, right? And the game itself looks like racquetball meets Tron Disc meets Arkanoid, which is actually one of my favorite spinner games of all time. But so it purposely sets out, and the devs of the game have even stated that specifically, that look, this is an exercise game, right? Or not just an exercise game, but this is a get off your arse, that was their exact quote, style game. So there we go, right? We talked about it, and now we're seeing an example of exactly that. Now, this next story is freaking hilarious. Maybe not hilarious facepalming in the way the South Park, scented VR piece was, but would you ever, in your wildest imaginations, think about merging these two things? Okay, gambling. Yeah, gambling. Okay, we can probably mix that with a lot of stuff. Hot tubs. Yeah, there's a game that does exactly that. It merges hot tubs with gambling, and it considers itself one in a new genre, right? One first title in a new genre called social VR. And if you watch they've actually got a 30-second, kind of looks like an infomercial, little hype trailer for the game itself. And there's basically a guy in there who, he's drinking a pina colada style drink out of a straw in a hot tub while the really cheesy, addiction-inducing jackpot sound effects are kind of spinning off around him, right? And, hey, been there, done that. There were games like EverQuest where they literally, we would say we dinged whenever you go up a level, right? And it was an addicting sound. It was this kind of like big cymbal ding, you'd gone up a level, and it was addicting. That's all I can say. And the same thing in World of Warcraft. Like, that has always been part of the MMO formula, is that same addictive quality that gambling has, right? That rush of just a little longer, just a little more. I'm going to come out on top, right? Like, MMOs, more than any other genre, have really done a good job at appealing to that part of our brains, that addictive part of our brains, right? And you know what? There could be a market for this game. I'm not going to judge anybody. If that's your thing, hot tubs and gambling, power to you. Just thought it was a little strange. I'm definitely going to talk about it. But check it out. It's a Road to VR article. Like I said, they've got a link to a little trailer there. 30 seconds of your life. You'll never get back, but I assure you it's at least mildly entertaining. So check that out. The next news piece has to do, and this one is a really, really, really cool story in that it deals with preservation, right? And for me personally, it's one of the things that I love about arcade emulation, right? It's why I built that arcade cabinet behind me, because it's a way for me to preserve a chunk of my childhood. Plain and simple, right? The nostalgia of those games right back at my fingertips. I can literally dial them in and play them within seconds, right? Any one of the hundreds I played as a child or teenager. Well, there's an Australian fella, his name is Joel Zika, and he's got an Indiegogo campaign, which is kind of like a Kickstarter, right? And I'm going to have the links for both his campaign and the story in the description below. But what he's trying to do, and it's called the Dark Ride Project, okay? And they're basically called ghost train rides. And they were super popular in the 20th century, specifically at their height in the 1930s. There were 1,700 of these in the continental United States alone, which is a significant number. Scarce over a dozen remain, right? And I think of the Americans, maybe 4 or 5 is what the article says remain. So what he's thought of is, and we talk about all the cool ideas for virtual reality on this channel, and yet we haven't even probably tapped into half, a quarter, maybe even a tenth of what virtual reality could ultimately deliver for us, right? And this is just another example, preservation, right? So same as I believe in arcade emulation helps preserve games like the main project. I think that's super important. Having PDFs of all the old comics that I have in my collection is important to me because I have a digital representation that's going to live on if my stuff goes up in a fire, right? Well, 360-degree footage for these ghost rides is perfect because it literally allows someone to experience the ride as it was meant to be experienced. True, minus the smell, minus feeling the rickety train going on its old rails, right? But these places are getting torn down, and a 2D film footage of it, it's just not going to do it justice. It's not going to deliver the scares. It's not going to satisfy the nostalgia for these things in quite the same way that 360-degree footage can, right? Because you are able to look around you. You're able to scout the area, prepare for an area, let the ride dictate where you look, and then scare the ever-living bejesus out of you because you fell for it, right? That's the kind of stuff that 360-degree, when used ingeniously like this, there I go using the word ingenious again, can really benefit all of us, right? And preserve history. So forget what he's trying to raise. I think it was 12,000 or 22,000. He's only raised about $100 so far. Personally, I'm going to donate it. I'm going to have the link for you guys. Obviously, there's no obligation, and I would never, ever ask or pressure or insinuate that people need to. No, if this is down your alley, fine. If not, hey, don't even click on the link. It's all good. But for me personally, I just thought it was such a cool thing. I'll probably throw a few bucks in there, right? Just to help it on its way. That's if it even makes it. So, but either way, cool to preserve that kind of stuff, because you think about it, how many of those mechanical machines have been lost, right? The ones that were there before the video arcade machines that we know about, right? The last story has to do with some footage, and this was on Collider.com for the Batman Arkham VR game. And this was all footage that was shot at the San Diego, this year's 2016 Comic-Con. So obviously, it's got a marketing slant to it, right? It was edited in such a way that you're only getting the thumbs up to the experience. The people saying it's awesome. I felt like Batman. Be the Batman, right? Was kind of the message of the whole clip. But understanding all of that, it was still cool in that you got to see a little bit of the gameplay. And what I really like is the way the mechanics of the game are kind of feeding the experience. And what I mean by that is you got to see in one clip where you, as the Batman, are literally getting funneled from one room into the other. But to pull that off in such a way that it's not feeling like a rail shooter, you know what I mean? Or where it feels so linear that you're basically being pulled by the nostrils through the frickin' story, right? Which I personally hate. And for me, Final Fantasy X was one of those games. It's a great game, story-wise, but I felt like I was literally, and Final Fantasy XIII, same thing, just being pulled through a straight line. But hey, different strokes for different folks, right? So there you go. And yeah, let me know what you think of that footage. Also in the link below. Again, that's from Collider.com. Well, guys, that's it. Time for me to chillax, do some gaming, and basically, yeah, just relax. As always, cheers, have a great one, and we will catch you on the flip side.